Today, we have a very special guest with us who is at the forefront of transforming traditional industries through groundbreaking technology. In this episode, titled Transforming Traditional Industries with New Tech, Embracing the Future, we'll be exploring the remarkable journey of integrating modern technology into the manufacturing sector. We'll discuss the challenges of introducing new tech, capturing the attention of conservative industries, and the critical role of customer acquisition and satisfaction. It's an exciting topic, and I can't wait to dive in. Now, let me introduce you to our incredible guest for today. Joining us is Chris Van Dyke from Overview, the next-gen AI industrial systems company that is revolutionizing, I can't even say that properly, the manufacturing landscape. Chris, I'm thrilled to have you here. Please tell our listeners a bit about yourself and the remarkable work Overview is doing to transform the manufacturing sector with AI.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be part of this conversation, and talk about some of these things that I've been working on and been really focused on in my career and passionate about. So, Overview is a company that uses computer vision to find mistakes in manufacturing. We use cameras, we point them at parts that are being made, and if a defect is spotted or something unusual is seen, then our automated software will pick it up and communicate with other robotics in a factory or communicate with humans. I kind of started this company a few years ago with some colleagues and friends, and some of us had been working in manufacturing. I worked at Tesla for several years, and that's a company very focused on automation in manufacturing and just general innovation. And the challenges around building things and making things have always been pretty kind of engaging for me and exciting. There's tons of really interesting problem solving in manufacturing and factories, and I've just been drawn to trying to work on those kind of problems. I was a mechanical engineer undergrad, worked at another startup before Tesla, but a lot of my time and career was spent at Tesla, sort of innovating, focusing on new tech, and then really figuring out how to build stuff that had never been built before and build it in a way that was more efficient and effective than previous techniques.
Nice. So did you ever meet Elon Musk at Tesla?
Yeah, I'm several times, and would have to kind of update him every couple of weeks in some periods of my time there. And when I started, it was only a 500-person company, so he was not as large a figure as he is now.
What was it like working with him? I've asked this from
He's
someone before.
okay. Yeah, I mean, he's very smart and kind of focuses. He's talking to people in all different disciplines and all different areas of the company. Stuff I've been kind of focusing on for weeks. I'd update him. He'd never have known anything about it, but he could always pick up on it very quickly, and then could push and sort of understand how how much you should be speeding up your timeline, or how far you should be shooting, for a technical improvement in a way that was very impressive. Because, I don't know, many times your manager is like a system expert or something that they know the field, and he'd be kind of dropping into these fields he didn't know, but he'd sort of know them, really well out of the gate, and would use that to really push everybody to do the absolute best they could on different tasks. And it was always stressful, because if you weren't doing that, you knew about it very quickly. But if you could kind of operate in that environment, it was an exciting way to work.
Nice. So good experience there. And again, I think it's definitely something to talk about. And impressive background you've got. You've obviously worked in manufacturing. You've worked at big brand out there, and obviously now starting up your company. So yeah, kudos to you. I think what our listeners and myself would be really interested in. So yes, there's loads of talks about, robotics, IoT. Obviously, we just saw the latest news about Apple yesterday, of the new AR stuff. So I'd be keen to sort of get an understanding about, what's happening, within your business and, or just in general within that industry. What are you kind of seeing in terms of some of the exciting advancements in technology in general that you feel has the potential to potentially revolutionize, I can't even say that word properly, but you know what I mean, factory
Yeah.
operations?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of drawn to manufacturing because it's a field that, is very tangible, useful outcome. But it actually gets sort of less tech attention than other fields in certain ways. And
Yeah, I
there's
agree.
some very high tech, very specialized stuff in factories, and they're always kind of marvels. But in other cases, a lot of the cutting edge tech and software in particular is sort of not really focused in manufacturing. Manufacturing is kind of need to have some know-how, have operated within manufacturing, a little bit in order to do a good product within it. And so people who kind of come into AI without any manufacturing background don't tend to kind of go into manufacturing. So we really did see it as both a field that's just very big and has a lot of different opportunities, but then one that
Mm.
was a little underserved from really cutting edge tech, and that seemed like a good opportunity for a company to try to really focus on bringing the latest stuff and stuff that's really useful into this industry where it was sometimes slower to adopt new technology.
Right. When I kind of envision manufacturing, I just envision, or just like I imagine, like a factory. There's loads of products on the line. It's being moved around, and then potentially there's like a robot like trying to help out. Is that, am I envisioning this correctly, or are we talking a bit more than this?
Um, that yeah, I mean, one thing, there's a huge range. So there are
Yeah.
some factories where it is tons and tons of robotics, and these very expensive, very complicated machines that are very specialized for that one thing. And so if it's something that's being manufactured that is like consumed by everybody daily or something, it's then it's being made in very high volumes, and there is a lot of specialization. um but then there's other stuff where it's really people kind of like putting things together and using tools and fixtures and some stuff to kind of speed up their process, but there's still mostly people doing most of the steps.
Mm.
And especially if you go to manufacturing sort of outside the US and Europe, then it's even more heavily,
Yeah.
people dominated. But even in those factories, there's a little bit of tech kind of here and there, and so that range just makes it sort of challenging, makes a lot of opportunities, but also yeah, you can walk into different factories. Sometimes they're even making the same thing, and they just look pretty different in terms of how much tech they've adopted and how much machinery they have versus people, that kind of thing. There are robots, certainly, but then there's other places where it's like somebody using a tool from like before World War II that like looks kind of crazy and old. And
Rusty. Yeah. Can you tell me a bit more about? So obviously you mentioned, you're using robotics. I know we've discussed things around sort of like machine learning. I'd love to kind of like know about some of the specific examples, potentially at your company or even generally in the manufacturing industry that is being incorporated into the manufacturing industry. So I'm imagining it could be like data analytics and IoT. I'd love to just find out more about that.
yeah, so we really focus on computer vision, computer
Mm.
looking at something and making a judgment or decision, gathering information about the thing it's looking at. And we do that on the parts themselves as they're
Yeah.
being made. So, we'll put a camera over a conveyor belt or over a machine that is doing some step. It's either, assembling something together or um, manipulating a part, changing a part in some way. Um, and those machines and conveyors and et cetera can be making thousands a day, even some cases, thousands an hour. And when you just make that many things over and over again, sometimes there's defects and variation and mistakes, and being able to look at every single one. It's not really feasible to have a person looking at every step, but a camera with good software can, and that can really help the factory operators find their mistakes faster, sort them out, make better, higher quality items by getting rid of the ones that have any potential defects in them. So that's our focus, but there's plenty of other automation focuses within factories. There's kind of a vision of that factory that somewhat you described, where like almost no one works. They'll call that like a lights out factory, and it's like all the robots running every step, robots moving things, changing things, manipulating, robots looking at things the way our cameras do. And different factories have different kind of pieces of that puzzle. Very few are all the way at the full automation, but ones that are quite a bit closer have robots that move parts around, robots that load parts into machines, machines that can pass parts to the next one. So you're always kind of taking something in and transforming that into something else. That's kind of what's happening in the factory, and so each of those steps can have something very tech heavy, or it can have something that's more of just like a person doing the step. And yeah, that's kind of like where the innovation is happening. The big tools, that the big places where innovation has been successful is there's these specialized steps. That's where there's kind of these big machines and specific robotics. Those have really been around for a long time. But then those only like can do one part of it, and then you need these more general tools that kind of fill in the gaps, and that's kind of where innovation is really happening now. And so sometimes it's cars, little like cart things that can move around parts without, it doesn't matter what the part looks like, it's they can move anything around. They'll automatically drive them from one side of the factory to another. Then there might be a robot that can load parts from take it off the automatic cart that's moving and put it into a machine. And if it's a specific one, it can only do that for one part. That's sort of the older tech. But if it's a general one that could do it for really any part, then the cost can be a lot lower. You might use it in more places, and you start to kind of like proliferate the technology. So for us, we really focus on that. But with the vision stuff is like, making it universal and not really just good at one thing, but kind of easy to set it up for a lot of different things. That again can bring the cost down. People can use it in more places, and you can automate kind of more effectively.
Right. Okay. Really interesting. And obviously it's very clear that, the results of using, this type of tool that you're providing, or, similar in the industry, is, improved efficiency, productivity, sustainability. Have you got any like real life examples or success stories, and just, getting some more detail potentially where you've helped potential business that you can openly discuss here, and how they potentially have improved efficiency by how many percent, and how much of an impact that's made?
I mean, we have customers in a lot of different segments, but automotive parts, that's a very kind of tech forward industry. There's lots of cars, lots of people drive cars, but they're also expensive, and they're big, and they have just a
Even
lot
more
of like,
expensive now.
yeah, totally. And they have a lot of like needs, and obviously that we came from Tesla too, so we know that industry fairly well. But we'll be watching some sub assembly. Maybe it's like the pedals that if you put a pedal assembly into a car, it's not just a pedal, but it's a pedal. There's a little computer, there's a hinge, there's some plastic housing parts, kind of like a whole, setup in there. And those are, made by actually usually a factory that's not the final factory. And so we'll be watching some of those steps, and in the
Mm.
past they would probably have 10 steps, and at the end, an engineer or a technician would check the whole thing, and if something failed in step one, you wouldn't really find out until the end, and then you'd have to disassemble your whole assembly, or maybe even worse, throw it all out. But if we watch step one with a camera and step three with a camera and step five with a camera, then we can find those mistakes, as they happen, and sort the parts out before they really get sort of assembled into higher value parts. And then they're able to make things faster, and make them not throw out as much stuff. So yeah, I don't know if that's specific enough, but
No, I
that's
think
the
that's really
kind of thing we're
interesting.
doing a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. You're targeting that industry, and obviously, during the pandemic, we heard a lot about sort of like the chip shortages. I think Mercedes, for example, had a bunch of recalls, didn't they? On, I think it was one of their airbags or
Yeah.
something. I know every single car in the UK or like in the US that they had a bunch of recalls for that. So I don't know how relevant that may be
Yeah.
with regards to the chip shortages, and where you can your company like yourself can help that industry overcome it.
Yeah, I mean, recalls are very costly, and that's
Yeah.
definitely like a when we're sort of selling our tech, and you think about the kind of that is a, like, salient point that often sits with people you're trying to sell to, is like, hey, you
Yeah.
can avoid some of this stuff. And I think that airbag, one of those airbag recalls, is the, like, worst, most expensive
Yeah.
recall of all time, I think. And it's a safety feature, so it really needs to be right. But yeah, that being able to watch more steps, that really can eliminate a lot of those things. And then the chip shortage, I don't that this is a pretty, like, sophisticated topic. I don't think I know everything about it, but
Don't think
certainly,
anyone does,
like,
do.
our goal is to make any factory operate better, so we can, hopefully we can help with some of those things. In a lot of cases, some of that stuff is the most kind of, like, sophisticated, cutting edge factories, and a lot of times we're putting our tech, we're kind of like helping a more, like, average factory kind of catch up in terms of automation and sophistication to some of the more cutting edge ones. So specifically, we don't do anything in those silicon manufacturing facilities now, but all manufacturing is linked in some ways.
Right. Okay. Really interesting. Thanks for sharing that insight about automotive. Yeah, really good to know that. And I didn't actually realize, that was the sort of sector, you guys are potentially targeting. I can kind of see where you're really adding value there. Moving on to the challenges part then. Where have you, or, other companies, within the industry, where have you kind of seen the hurdles and potentially some concerns when you're introducing robots and
Yeah.
analytics and
Um,
cameras into that industry?
yeah, I mean, it's a hard industry to break into for a couple of reasons, especially with new tech. One, it's just the stakes are very high. If your factory is producing something, um, maybe it's like a bottle, or a piece of, like, some kind of a container or something. You might be producing like a million a day, and so if like something is not working the way it's supposed to, and you have to shut down the factory, you're losing a lot of, like, sales, and you're losing a lot of time, and there's a lot of cost to figure it out. So people don't generally want to use anything that they don't know too much about, or has been proven. So a new startup saying, hey, we've got, like, this great new thing, that often is met with skepticism, and you need to kind of prove it on some
Mm.
side process that isn't as important as the main one, or some slowly kind of roll it out do some testing, that kind of thing. So that can be hard for a young company that, doesn't have that much time to get everything working. Um, Another thing is that I was kind of talking to this earlier, but there are all these specific um, use cases in factories, and you can try to innovate around those, and that there are companies that have done that, and there's like um a lot of engineering effort can go into solving a particular customer's problem, but it might not be the exact same problem as anyone else. So you having a product that you can really sell and then like sort of do a limited amount of support to, and have it and move on to the next customer scale, that's that can be really hard in manufacturing. Sometimes you have sort of half a product that you need to really do some custom work with each customer to get it to work in their actual use case. And so um, that's another place where, if you're a small company with limited resources, you want to pick one thing to really get good at. You have to be kind of careful with what you pick, because you might pick something that only 4 or 5 people have as a problem, and then you got 4 or 5 customers, and then that's it. You got to do something else. um, if you pick something really general that like everybody needs, that's great, but often those things aren't, it's hard to find those things,
Mm.
or there's other people working on those or something. So where you start in the field can be a tricky thing to figure out.
Right. And I'm also imagining as well, when it comes to employees in um, a company such as yours, or within the manufacturing industry, um, I can imagine that some may be hesitant to sort of embrace some of the new technology due to sort of comfort, workforce implications, maybe some regulatory constraints. What's your kind of advice in terms of overcoming that and fostering that acceptance?
um, yeah, I mean, definitely there's definitely a lot of kind of people that act very conservatively. uh Sometimes you can just find the people that are the most adventurous, and work with them, and then once you prove it kind of with those people, then you can kind of spread it to the people that are less conservative. I mean, that's kind of a sort of business tactic in all fields, but
Right.
it's really kind of apparent in manufacturing. um a lot of other times though, you got to just kind of like work with their systems, and sometimes they have a group. If it's a big enough company, they might have a group that really does just evaluate
Mm.
technology, and finds use cases where it's lower stakes, or somehow it could prove itself but not cause a huge cost if it doesn't work. And that those, again, if you can find those, that can be really good, but then that can also take a long time to prove something in manufacturing. Usually needs to be working really well for like months, on end, before it'll be kind of deemed effective. So you might end up finding some people that are interested in trying it, but the trial takes a while, and you're not really making that much money during the trial. They'll pay a little bit probably, but not enough to really grow a company. So you're sort of doing it speculatively. um the way the product is made also can really make a big difference. If there's barriers to um getting something set up, you can if you can find those and break them down by making your product sort of skip steps that other people don't skip, or
Mm.
just easily connect with other factory systems, those kind of things, that can also really help, because if you make it easier for the person to try it, make the trial time, get to the trial results faster, that can that's something we've really spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do.
Right. How long, just on average, some of these trials can take?
It really varies. Bigger companies, usually you have to do more of a trial, and a trial might not be like in a lab. It might still be on a factory. in an actual production use case, but it's like still kind of controlled, and one that they've picked out that they know, is kind of particularly representative, and maybe doesn't is like not as high stakes as some others, and so that it can really vary. But almost everyone we sell to, we want to sell them many of our cameras, but they're always kind of buying one or two at first, and then using them for a couple months before they decide if they're going to use more of them.
Right. Okay. I mean, apart from obviously Tesla, the obvious, and your company, can you share perhaps any notable examples of companies where they've sort of successfully introduced new technology and drove widespread adoption in the manufacturing sector that you can maybe list?
Yeah, there are there's definitely kind of robotic companies, and companies that have pushed different kind of like softwares, and different software and stuff into factories. Uh, it's a company, Tulip, that has done a pretty good job of getting a kind of factory operating software into, so it's not actually robotics or automation, but it's a software that just helps people get their jobs done, and that's kind of an innovative company. And yeah, like I think there's been several companies doing the automated uh, part moving things. Often they get bought by Amazon, or
Mm,
somebody who's innovating in a Amazon does a lot of warehouse automation, so that's
yeah.
kind of close to manufacturing. So yeah, I don't know. There's definitely some good companies out there.
And
From
yours, of
like,
course.
yeah, ours of course.
All
Um, yeah.
right. So talking about the actual customers then, again, I'm sure it's very important as part of sort of your company values and missions is about, satisfying them, acquiring them, distinguishing them. How does that sort of play a role within the manufacturing sector
Um,
in terms of acquiring
Finding
customers there?
customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, that kind of like some of the barriers was talking about, they definitely break down as you have a bigger customer list and have more references to point to. So, early customers are just very sort of high stakes and worth, a lot of time and effort, both in the kind of reference and stuff they can do, but also what you can learn from them. Even having operated as a manufacturing engineer, I still, had a slightly different view on what was necessary than a lot of our customers have. So, you just really want to spend a lot of time and effort, and even if your product doesn't cost that much, fly to your customer several times, lose money if you need to on the early ones, in order to really just understand what the customer wants, and how how your tool is fitting in, how whatever it is you're selling is fitting in. um, and yeah, that's again probably fairly standard, but I think it's maybe even more apparent in manufacturing than some other areas.
Right. Okay.
And because the manufacturing is physical, like being in their factory is really helpful. You do you might you can't during the pandemic and stuff, we try to do a lot of stuff over Zoom, and it worked okay, but it really, now that you can kind of travel more freely, we really are pushing back to being in person, because that's just much more um relevant and useful when you're working
Definitely.
on something visible with someone.
Definitely. I'm very happy that in persons are back. I think it's just, truly
Mhm.
just generally in business.
Yeah,
I think
awesome.
there's a
It's
lot that
nicer.
can be
Yeah,
achieved.
totally.
Yeah, definitely. And it gets you out of the little office that we're all in. A lot of us are sort of working from home and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I can definitely see the value for you there, especially within manufacturing. So again, I know we've just gone past the 30-minute mark there, and I don't want to take all day of your time, but um,
Mhm.
I know
It
obviously
went
last
fast.
year,
Yeah,
yeah, it went fast. I don't know where the time went.
yeah.
So I know you guys got some Series A funding. I believe it was sort of like last year. So yeah, I mean, what's next for you guys? What's the sort of the objectives that you're looking to sort of line up by the end of the year?
Yeah, we shifted from a kind of services based product. So some of those things I was talking about, where you we had a product, but it really required a lot of focus to kind of or custom work to get it to work for individual customers. To now a product that is much more of a DIY, and customers can kind of do it themselves.
Mm,
So we raised money at the end of 2021, but we've really launched this newer product, just a couple months ago, and so we're still kind of in a phase where we're really pushing hard on that, trying to get that established, and really understand how much people like it, which seems, at this point, it seems like they do. But we almost we it in some ways our kind of corporate strategy is a little up in the air as we figure out exactly how much to kind of focus on this product, or to sort of come out with some extensions for it, or even come out with another product in addition to it. So yeah, we're just generally kind of in that phase. We're working really closely with our customers, and pushing to some where we have a pretty established relationship, and they kind of use our stuff without us paying that much attention. But kind of, yeah, we're just trying to really establish our products, and kind of get our name out in the manufacturing space.
nice. Well, I mean, again, sounds like um, you guys are progressing really well. Again, you got your. I thought you had your funding in 2022. I obviously probably read that wrong, but yeah, it sounds like
We announced we maybe got it. We got it at
okay.
the end of 2021 and announced it in 2022.
Got
So
it.
you're good.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So that's just what the press said. We just rely on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, it's been an absolute pleasure, having you on the show. It's just gone so quick. I don't know where these 30 minutes have gone. Is there anything that you would like to share or add about sort of what we've discussed today, in the industry in general, but also, about overview and what's next?
Um, I don't know. I guess just, I mean, if you're an engineer listening to this, and you are a software engineer in AI, or in really any kind of software area, I do recommend checking out manufacturing companies, or companies doing manufacturing tech. Um, it's you really get a lot of the stuff you build really gets used in very useful ways kind of immediately, and there's just not that much software innovating attention to the field for how much opportunity there is to kind of really create great products. So um, a lot of there's not that many like famous manufacturing tech companies yet, but hopefully there'll be some soon, and it is just a really cool area to work. So yeah, I recommend people give it a look.
Nice. And I think what could be good as well, some of the sort of some of the markets that I work in. So when I'm sort of mapping out business development, there are like Lumiscapes where there's like a number of companies on there. You've got some for like Martech, for example. You've got some for like AI in general. I'm wondering if there is one for manufacturing, and if not, that it would be nice to just see like an infographic or just a Lumiscape of all the different types of like manufacturing AI companies. I think that would help like potential employees, but
Yeah,
also may help you in terms of analyzing that competitive landscape you're in.
yeah. There's definitely investors and stuff that have put those kind of charts together. It is a big field, so there's people doing vision, people doing robotics, people doing just
Right.
more operational software. So there's a lot of stuff. But yeah, there are, it's not like there's no startups. There's a lot of startups, but it's such a big industry that it can really sustain a lot of startups. So, but yeah, I don't have one of those off the top of my head that I recommend, but I've seen them out there.
Fair enough. Okay, well, thank you so much again, Chris. Really appreciate your time on this show. What I'll do, obviously, after the show, I'll publish it, on LinkedIn. So, what I can do, is share your contact information on LinkedIn. So if any potential employees that want to join your business, or other startups that might want to ask you some questions, hopefully, they can just kind of reach out to you
Great.
directly and do
Yeah.
that. Nice. All right.
Yeah, and
Well,
certainly if you're working in manufacturing and you're interested in computer vision to help you, certainly reach out to us. We can definitely show you our product and just tell you in general about how computer vision can help.
nice. Well, it's a really exciting industry, and it's a nice buzzword, computer vision. So I'm sure some of our listeners will be really interested in connecting with you and finding more about that. So thank you so much for your time,
Great.
Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully connect and see you next time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Me too.